What's the point of a political party? I imagine it's to align yourself with like-minded individuals, to harmonize on key issues and have strength in numbers at the ballot box. But what happens when the people you've been voting for betray your vote? Instead of peace and freedom, they give you war and shackles. What happens when your party refuses to confront them? While the party may have been filled with like-minded individuals, the only important part of the equation is that it's filled with individuals. You're an individual. You're not bound to any party you do not make yourself bound to. Registering Republican is not like being born into your family. You do actually get a choice. I believe Americans want to stand up to injustice. But can a person stand against injustice if that person can't even stand against their own party? If it were up to me, I would disband all political parties. I think labels are dangerous and lazy. You're not a Republican. You're not a Democrat. You're you. And no label will ever articulate that the way you deserve. Do I really think I can know who you are based on what group you associate yourself with? While that may say something about you, it isn't who you are. That politicians get anyone's vote because they hide behind the label is insane. God forbid we actually look at the person we're voting for instead of who our party tells us we should like. Look, I know Democrats and Republicans aren't going away soon. But until then, what if you did that anyway? You know, looked at who you're voting for regardless of their political affiliation. What if rather than just promises you had a track record that showed conviction rather than compromise? What if the corporations you hate refused to give money to that candidate? What if he was funded entirely by regular people, like-minded people? What if the person you have the most common ground with isn't even in your own political party? What would you do? What would you choose? Stick to the same tired box, or switch parties and wear the stigma like a badge of honor?
Mirroring a march and rally in Washington, Ron Paul supporters gathered today at the state capitol.
KXAN's political reporter Josh Hinkle tells us why they're standing behind the only candidate left in the presidential race who has served in the military.
It was a small group with big hopes, a handful of veterans for Ron Paul, like Army Specialist Joshua Thoreau.
I got out 6 months ago and can't find a job.
Thoreau says he's seen the concern the Texas congressman shown for soldiers in his situation. That's why he showed up at the state capitol today.
We do all we can for our country, and then we come back to nothing.
The group stood in the rotunda, displaying an American flag to point out the U.S. deaths in Iraq and Afghanistan. Paul's supporters say his foreign policy stands out from the others.
Bring our troops home. You know, we're tired of fighting.
They say he wants to stop policing the world and focus on our own nation.
Unlike other people who are running for president, Ron Paul has gotten more active duty donations.
In fact, in the last fundraising quarter of 2011, his listed military donations were more than the other candidates combined.
The ceremony today here at the Capitol is also a reminder Ron Paul is the only veteran left in the GOP race. And if he doesn't earn the nomination, it will be the first time in 68 years a veteran won't be competing in the general election.
Paul served as an Air Force flight surgeon and then in the U.S. Air National Guard in the 60s. This group says next they're ready to see him serve as president. And despite his poll numbers, it's a fight they're not willing to give up.
We actually are defending our freedom rather than some border or some political cause overseas.
Josh Hinkle, KXAN News.
Well, the GOP race may have moved on to Florida, but there is a voting controversy that's going on now in South Carolina that's catching a bit of attention. The Palmetto State's Attorney General saying more than 900 of the voters in the recent elections were actually dead people. And you might wonder, how do those dead people find their way to the polls? That's what we're wondering. Senior correspondent Eric Shawn checking this out for us. Eric, what's going on here?
Well, Martha, South Carolina's Attorney General is now asking the feds to investigate possible voter fraud there. Alan Wilson's a Republican. He says an analysis of recent elections in the state shows that 953 dead people voted. And in some cases, votes apparently were cast in the names of the deceased who had been dead for as long as 6 years. Attorney General Wilson cites what he calls voting irregularities, though there is no evidence, they say, so far that any dead people cast ballots in Saturday's Republican presidential primary. In a letter dated January 11th calling for a probe, Wilson wrote, quote, "There are numerous discrepancies concerning people who have voted in recent elections who may not have been entitled to vote. Over 900 persons who were deceased at the time of the elections appear to have voted. Voter fraud cannot be tolerated." You know, this is not the first time state elections officials have discovered the possibility of the dead voting. Back in 2008, it took some college journalism students in Connecticut to find about 300 dead people who cast ballots. We talked to one woman who had a ballot cast in her dead mother's name. Well, elections officials blame faulty data, and the Brennan Center for Justice in New York, Martha, says while allegations of dead people voting are, quote, popular and entertaining pop culture, they claim that most cases are unfounded, caused by what they say is just wrong information on the voting rolls.
Really? Well, that's interesting. So, Eric, this comes, of course, as a controversy over South Carolina's voter ID law is also going on.
Yeah, that's a huge controversy. The Department of Justice, as you may know, has moved to stop South Carolina from enacting its new controversial voter ID law that requires a photo ID to vote. Attorney General Eric Holder says the law discriminates against minorities who do not have that proper identification. They say an estimated 82,000 people in South Carolina may not have the proper photo ID. Well, South Carolina Republican Governor Nikki Haley has called the Justice Department effort a, quote, terrible, clearly political decision. She's vowed to appeal it in court. And, of course, if you suspect voter fraud or election problems where you live, there's our address, voterfraud@foxnews.com.
We know who to call. Thank you, Eric. Right. Eric Shawn in the newsroom.
The Ron Paul revolution comes to Oklahoma City. He's the latest Republican presidential hopeful to visit our state looking for support. Supporters crowded outside the Capitol here in Oklahoma City to rally for Texas U.S. Representative Paul. New tonight, News 9's Jamie Oberg talked to voters who hope to help Paul become the next commander-in-chief.
I came from Texas, 3-hour drive to be here.
Passionate political supporters like Alexandria crowded into Oklahoma City to hear Ron Paul.
Ron Paul revolution! Ron Paul revolution!
Hundreds chanted and clapped for the man they hope is nominated for the next president of the United States.
In Washington, they're still sound asleep. They don't hear from us yet, but that is our job, to hear from us and let them get the message what we need in this country, that's more liberty.
Dr. Ron Paul did not disappoint his grassroots ralliers, bringing his message of liberty, less government, and more personal liberty.
He speaks with the most conviction and speaks with the most reality of how things actually are. The message of liberty is something that just resounds with young people.
He does have older supporters, but the biggest Ron Paul fans seem to be a much younger generation. He gave a shout out to them and says he appreciates their support.
There's a lot of stories written about that. Why should those young kids and young people be concerned? I said, well, their minds haven't been clouded up with a lot of stuff yet.
It's pretty ironic, you know, that he's the oldest candidate with the largest youth support. I think it's just because it really is something different.
Those supporters hope to see something different when Ron Paul is mentioned in national polls.
I don't think he's an underdog. I think he's on top. I really do. And the media is not really reporting that, but he's definitely on top.
In Oklahoma City, Jamie Oberg, News 9.
The Paul crowd outside the Capitol estimated at a little more than 1,000.
This is the special event, the exclusive Back to the Future debate. Believe it or not, right now we are broadcasting to you from the past. Gentlemen, tell us your positions.
Hi, my name's Mitt Romney. I'm quite liberal, and I have never agreed with Ronald Reagan's ideas. Also, when it comes to abortion, I will always defend the woman's choice. I believe in big government, and I support more government spending.
I'm Ron Paul, and I believe the government is too big. We spend too much, borrow, and tax too much. It's bankrupting this country. I support and defend the Constitution.
Wait a second. 1.21 gigawatts, it looks like we are now traveling back to the future.
What the hell? Wow, whoa, 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 whoa.
Mitt, hold on. Your hair gel is flying all over the place. Wait. I think we've arrived. It's the year 2012.
Hi, my name's Mitt Romney. I'm a conservative, and I strongly believe in Ronald Reagan's ideas. Also, I am against abortion and pro-life. I have never supported big government spending. I might as well tell you to believe me when I say, I've been to Mars. Santa Claus flew me there in his magic sleigh.
I'm Ron Paul, and I believe the government is too big. We spend too much, borrow, and tax too much. It's bankrupting this country. I support and defend the Constitution.